Good evening, everyone. I have 5:30, so we will call this meeting of the Budget Committee to order. Mrs. Donaldson, would you call the roll, please?
Deacon. Present. Fitzwater. Hensley.
Present.
Kimna. Here. Lester.
Here.
Schreiber.
Present.
Spencer.
Here.
Spicer.
Present.
Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Thank you very much. We are going to pick up where we left off last meeting. At the last meeting, I presented some items related to the public safety tax fund and the our effort to prepare a compression pool of 2% across each of the funds. So I don't think I need to go through each one of the public safety tax initial budgeting items individually again. I'm happy to if people would like, but it's 911 salary increase, FOP salary increase that's already in their contract, additional funding for the IAFF contract on top of what's already in the draft budget to get them to a per employee net equal figure with FOP, fire command staff and possible fire command staff funding, the police camera sergeant position that we've already at least initially approved. Last time I proposed a 10%, or sorry, I proposed allocating an amount equal to 10% of the cost of public safety holiday pay and benefits. Councilman Lester, I thought, had some great analysis on why 15% made sense as a number, and I know that he has that item in there just under mine. Councilman Lester, would you mind if I took that 5% and added it in with my 10% so we could vote on the whole 15?
Please do.
Thank you. I would like to incorporate that in the way that is easiest for Ms. Convery this evening, so that we would be doing the 15% holiday pay inclusive of benefits rather than 10. Also brought back in the allocation for health and dental increase for public safety staff, 164,942 allocation for public safety personnel portion of the compression pool, and finally partial funding of the police department grant manager position out of public safety tax for reasons that we discussed at length last time of $40,749. If anyone would like more discussion or has questions about the public safety tax portions, I'm happy to entertain them. On the compression pool piece, with respect to the general fund, airport fund, and transit fund, we are aiming at 193.70, and just as a reminder, I got to 193.70 by reallocating the roughly $82,000 we had identified as a potential way to partially bring back the compost contract by applying the $70,000 in additional anticipated central bank interest from our recently adopted contract, and then $40,749 of general fund funding from the PD grant manager position. Again, a series of steps that we discussed at length last time. So that in a nutshell is what I brought up last time, what we discussed last time, and as an initial piece of business tonight, because we have some pieces that are interconnected between the compression pool item and the public safety tax slate of funding, I will move at this point for the adoption of these changes that I have proposed affecting the public safety tax fund and our compression pool affecting the general fund, airport fund, and transit fund, as amended with the 15%. So I will make that motion at this point.
I would second that motion.
Motion and some seconds. And now discussion. Is there additional discussion to be had on this motion? Councilman Spencer.
So, just for being able to have a reference point for this year and future budgets, we all understand that the public safety tax was a tax that was passed to supplement the current funding or previous funding, however you want to look at, from general fund. And so, are we going to put a placeholder from here on out for what public safety has been receiving from general fund? If that makes sense.
I think what you're asking is there a way that we can make sure that we don't, creep down towards reducing public safety funding out of general fund?
That is my concern.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. I have the same concern.
And I'll also note that Sheila Perry is online as well. I think the answer to that would be we've got a consistent number in there, and so council will be able to see that number every year, make sure that doesn't go down. Does that answer the question? I
Yes.
certainly understand that to be the case, that we don't want
Yes,
to
correct.
supplant anything.
Well, and we have two numbers, right? We can see on a linear path the general fund, public safety department's funding, because that number should not include public safety tax funding, should it? Spending out of public safety tax fund should stay within public safety tax fund pages, if that made sense.
Yes, we end up taking some of the public safety tax money, whichever is needed for the salary piece, as you said, and then allocate that into the budget. So you'd certainly be able to see that number and be able to see the total revenues for the public safety tax, and then also be able to see what's been in the general fund year by year for the overall budget for all the public safety departments.
Yeah, so you would just have to back out, at worst, I think you would just have to back out the salary piece that's added in from public safety.
Which we would
funds.
have identified, yes.
Yeah. Councilman Spencer?
And as a follow-up, I would really encourage us to then, after we approve these allocations and expenditures from the public safety tax, that we really pump the brakes hard on any additional spending for next year's budget until we really get a full year of completion of revenue stream, so that we really have a good foundation going forward.
And that we leave sufficient money in there for growth, too, over the whatever number
And
of
hopefully
years
so.
with an agreement, so yeah.
Yeah, the unallocated amount in the public safety tax fund, based on projected revenues, with what I have up here, would be $373,733. So,
Per year.
correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Councilman Deacon.
Well, maybe this isn't the time, but how do we protect that safety tax from future councils when they dig into it? It seems like we're on agreement here, but I think the language was ambiguous enough that other things could be slickered in like they did on the capital improvements. Can this council somehow guarantee in future sessions that, I don't know how to do it, but I'm nervous about that. That was my only concern.
Thank you. Is there any staff guidance as to current council's ability to control future councils?
No, you cannot put restraints on future councils like that. So the answer is, the diligence of future councils to make sure that that intent continues to be honored, and the political ramifications if that intent is not honored in the future. But there's nothing from a technical standpoint that the city council could do short of a charter change.
Mr. Kroll.
One thing you might do is just make sure that your intent is reflected in the minutes.
Councilman Lester.
I would just say, I think, you know, the presentations we went to, the public was, that was a question that kept coming up, that it not take one away from current funding from the general fund. And so, I mean, in the vote, I felt that was part of our commitment. And I think it's, going forward, yeah, we can't bind other councils, but I think certainly leadership of police and fire certainly can remind councils that was the vote, and that was what the public understood. And I think that's probably the most we could do.
Councilman Spencer.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mormon, but we could define specifically what public safety definition is.
Yeah, you certainly could, but a future council could change that definition. So it's, yeah, you could put some guide frames, but knowing that that is amendable like any other ordinance.
My concern is that, you know, we could define a public safety issue or a crisis would be, you know, let's straighten out a certain road. That's a public safety concern. So we'll take dollars out of the public safety tax to specifically address that road to straighten it. So I think there's enough of us on this current body of council that we can try to convey that, but if there was a way to more finely define what public safety was, I think that would be a good course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think it also is important what we're doing right now in establishing sort of this first generation of public safety tax funding. I think to give examples as to what we find appropriate, and also to, again, not in a way that would be unchangeable, but at least to commit funding in an intentional way that future councils would at least have to go through the trouble of reducing in a public way. So at the very least, drawing attention to, you know, to those types of actions. Any other comments, questions, discussion on this point? Seeing none, Mrs. Donaldson, would you call the roll, please?
Deacon.
Aye.
Fitzwater. Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Spicer. Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Thank you very much. It appeared that the ayes had it. Okay, wonder if Councilman Lester would like to introduce and then summarize his cut revisions and new cut proposals.
So on the current parking lot, up on the screen, I believe, will be shown a number of modifications to the original reductions or cuts that Chairman Hensley proposed. In those reductions, I basically, when I could, just split the difference between what Chairman Hensley was proposing and what I was proposing. They're not all that much. Some of them goes more to what Chairman Hensley was proposing. And then in addition to that, so that we can make those reductions, I've gone through and identified other line items that, in my opinion, we could have similar reductions. Each of those I've tried to make less than 15% in terms of reduction. Some of them much less than that. But I think those are shown at the bottom of the current parking lot, or toward the bottom. In those I guess I'll go through those because those are new proposals. So for the mayor and council, dues and publications, I've put in to reduce that by $735. City manager dues and publications reduced by $300. City attorney training and education reduced by $900. Planning public protective services and planning dues and publications reduced by $1,500. Public Works Administration gas reduced by $18,950, and Public Works Streets office supplies reduced by $200. For total amount there comes to an additional reductions in the general fund of $22,585. So those are then additional reductions, and I thought that would help more just spread the pain and not make some of the other reductions that were proposed so painful.
Because in addition to these 22,000 in additional
Right.
cuts that went along with you essentially reversing, I think about $74,000 worth of cuts that I had originally in my several page presentation a few weeks ago, right?
Correct. The sum of
Yeah.
the difference is
Yeah.
about 74,000, right?
Right. Well, I appreciate your work on this. It is painstaking, and you did a really detailed, thorough job here. And
I got a really nice headache.
it's good for that. So I support what you're doing here tonight. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I believe that covers it. Want to have discussion, or
Yeah.
if not, I go ahead and propose that we adopt those changes.
Go ahead and make your motion.
I move that we adopt the discussed changes, both to changes to original line item reductions and the addition of the new reductions.
And I will second that, and I am confident that certainly finance staff knows exactly what Councilman Lester is referring to, sort of in a shorthand, and that if there's any question with Mrs. Donaldson, that staff will coordinate there. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Councilman Spencer.
Just for clarification, so with the mayor and council salary reductions, has that been?
So there were two items that for which the reductions I changed to 0, and so that they would stay as the proposed budget. And one of those was the salaries for mayor and council, and the only other one was postage for finance, which I considered they pretty much know, and those are pretty much obligatory postages that they have to do, and that was the same as last year's, I believe, in postage.
And the only staffing additions for this next year's budget as of right now is the police sergeant and the quasi-grant writer position, correct?
That's correct. As for
Thank you. Other discussion on the topic, on the motion, rather. Mr. Kroll?
Could I just add something that we anticipate bringing a supplemental to council for this year for gas and parts. Now, part of that is, at the beginning of this fiscal year, we didn't have the full inflation picture. We knew that picture a little bit better when we prepared some of the fuel for the FY23 budget. So we based that on the higher prices, but I just want to make sure I mention that.
Well, we'll look forward to that then. Just kidding. Yeah. Always the good news. Other discussion on the motion. Councilman Spencer.
Sorry. The reserve fund balance will be close for this year's, with all these changes, where will we be at for that number? It might be premature to determine that, though, without working all these numbers in the final product.
I haven't seen an updated projection on fund balance.
Not with these changes.
Okay, all right, then I'll reserve that, and then we can receive that and before final budget vote anyway, so okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to point out, with all of the changes that are up there tonight, if they were all to be adopted, we would be $671 on the right side of balanced, right? Okay. Other discussion on the motion? Seeing done, Mrs. Donaldson, call the roll, please.
Fitzwater, Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Spicer. Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Deacon.
Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Councilman Lester. I'll ask at this point whether there's anyone here to provide public comment. Nope. Okay, continuing on with committee discussion. Other topics of discussion for this evening by any council member? Any further report by staff on any? Oh, Councilman Lester.
So I'm not going to talk about any of this tonight, but I think at finance, I do want to, because of discussions and this budget process, I think I'd certainly like to talk about a number of topics and then bring some of them forward to council. One of them being perhaps the administrative chargeback study. I'd like to again review something with respect to us having so low staff with planners now and having the most grants and things to follow that we've ever had. At some point, talk about perhaps the use tax, which Councilman Deacon has brought up a number of times. And I think because we are setting our budget the way we have this year, and we need to track it more closely, but I think we need to have a discussion about the fund balance and how far it can, the fund balance is for if we have a downturn, and so certainly we want to spend it in those circumstances, but I think we need to have a discussion about how far we let it go down before actions are taken to readdress the budget, and really having plans for staff in terms of directing of, if they had to cut, what would they cut? So.
Absolutely. Any other comments, questions on the topic Councilman Lester just raised? Councilman Spencer.
And I think you bring up a good point, and I think it is proven that the reserve fund balance, when it got lowered quite a bit through spending of this current year's budget, for a lot of high priority reasons and needs. But I think it would be good, and I think I have mentioned this before, that if we would have some dedicated time, a section on the agenda of one or both council meetings that we meet, of having a quick financial report, and that would be part of that, of going over that reserve fund balance, just so that it's always in the back of our minds during the course of the year. These chargebacks assessment or study, I think, would be a good idea. We could, because you've been attending every meeting for our organizational review committee, we could possibly put that back on the table to have them look at that possibly. I just wouldn't want it to be an overriding. I'd want to make sure we were able to do the core functions and requests and requirements from that committee that they've sought after. So if it's something we could add on to that, maybe that's something we could look into as well. So.
Yeah.
Thank
It-
you.
So I'd just say we do have a little bit of ARPA money still left that could be used for that chargeback study.
Great. Any other discussion on that point? Any other topics of discussion this evening before the committee? Councilwoman Wiseman,
Can I move to approve the budget?
you can make such a motion.
I'd like to do that.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the budget.
Second.
Multiple seconds. Enthusiastic on the seconds. That's right. Any final discussion on the motion?
I just want to thank you for waiting for me to come back to the United States to do this, so that way I could feel really American today.
Wait,
I'm wearing red, white, and blue for you.
thank you for your service on the council. Any, Councilman Spencer?
The only concern I would have about voting on that tonight, or would that be your intention to move it forward to a full council meeting?
Yes, sir, just to move it to the full council meeting. I don't think we're actually in session. We're just in a committee meeting, so I don't think we could approve it as a city
Correct.
council tonight.
This is to approve it to vote it
this
out of committee.
Do we have any update on timetable of when Evergreen's going to give us information?
No, Steve and I have both forwarded information to them and have not received final responses back. We're waiting for, basically they sent some draft spreadsheets that still need a lot of cleanup work. We sent that back to them last Thursday. I did send a follow-up email this morning inquiring on a timeline. They're supposed to be breaking it down so that each department director can see basically the recommendations within their department, so that they would have an opportunity to provide some feedback before we get a final report. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now.
So once that feedback gets sent back to Evergreen, could we receive a copy of that right away before it's just dropped in our lap at a council meeting, so that we can kind of review that, have some time to kind of digest that? I would
Sure.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, and appreciate council's dedication to this budget. I think this is probably about the latest we've gone as far as timing on budget meetings, and probably the most number of changes and additions and parking lot items, at least that I've seen in the years I've done this. So appreciate
And number of meetings.
and yes, so for your leadership, Councilman Hensley, as the budget chair, and council taking the time to be dedicated enough to commit to doing all of this work is important. Also, I know Mrs. Perry is on the line, has done a lot of extra work to get the parking lot where it is, and I appreciate the entire finance department and city staff for what they do. And then I guess lastly, just for the benefit of the public, and I know some media have asked the question, what are some of the next steps? So like you said, this will go to the next council meeting, so you might just touch on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it's going to come to council on October 17th. So not this next meeting, but the one after, to give staff ample time to finalize, and the additional time for a possible resolution of some outstanding questions won't hurt either. And thank you very much for your partnership on this. It hasn't been easy for anyone involved in the process, and certainly no one involved in the decision making or budget shaping role here. So, Councilman Spencer.
I would echo that as well. I appreciate everybody's work and dedication on this budget, and especially the department directors of really working hard on setting their priorities. I guess what I would also like to do is encourage maybe future mayors to change a little bit of the process and get with our finance chair and our subcommittee chairs to kind of help form the mayor's budget. I think having earlier communication within all those subcommittees and the finance chair committee I think would yield maybe a more streamlined, better product in the end. So just a food for thought and for suggestion.
Madam
possible.
Mayor.
That might be good to be really clear and clarify that at some future finance committee meetings, because I know that it's outlined pretty clear what that process is outlined, where it is the city administrator's budget, then it comes to the mayor, and then it comes to council. So while it's very collaborative, it's also very separate. So I agree, it'd be nice to, I mean, if we want to do things earlier, though, we just need to probably really clarify, because that puts additional not limitations or restrictions, but just expectations on staff. So I would want to make sure that not just by mentioning it now that we would think next year like, oh, I said I wanted a certain date. I would say collaboratively you all can decide when you want Steve's budget, the city administrator, and then when you expect my budget. Because I feel like we turned it around extremely quickly this year, like really, really fast. So if that were to be sped up, we just need to know. And I would say the Finance Committee could make those decisions and give staff ample time. Thank
Well,
you.
We're getting pretty close to starting on the FY24 budget, so can get that ball rolling. Other discussion on the budget, on the process, on the pending motion? Seeing none, Mrs. Donaldson, call the roll, please.
Hensley,
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber, Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer, Ward, Wiseman,
Aye.
Deacon,
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Thank you very much. The ayes have it. The committee has approved the draft FY23 budget. It will be presented to council on October 17th. And just want to, again, thank everyone for all their hard work. Ms. Convery, thank you very much. Mrs. Perry, if you can hear us, thank you so much for all your work. Council members, staff, everyone involved. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
Before you totally adjourn, unrelated announcement tonight at Lincoln University football team is at the Governor's Mansion doing a food drive. If you have time on your way, it's till 7 p.m. So you have 1 hour to hop over there and meet the team and support their food drive. So go Blue Tigers. Thanks.
Go Blue Tigers. Thank you so much.